Morning, everybody. I don't want to start. Don't want to start 1 minute early. All right. Come on up. First, I know you guys saw last week, but hadn't had a chance to talk about it at a press conference. Very excited for the FAA and appreciative for the $4 million from the FAA Airport Terminal Program. That's something that we've been fighting to get on for a couple of years. And like many grant programs, the first money is the hardest to get. That doesn't mean that that's all we will ever get from the terminal grant program. And we've seen in years past where getting that grant dollars the first time goes a long way in terms of year 2 and year 3. But the good news is, you know, we're looking at it, if we're calling it a $90 million airport terminal at the moment, that's under design, between the state's $5 million and the Fed's $4 million. You know, that's $9 million of found grant dollars to help us make that terminal project happen. We continue to push forward on the bonding, on the design, and everything else. We continue our airport team working diligently on that. And the RFQ for pre-construction and construction management services for the project, the big step before we put shovels in the ground, that RFQ closes on December 10th. So again, we're very, very appreciative of that. And while we're talking about the airport, parking comes up. We got the holiday season coming up. You saw we announced that we have passed 3 million passengers. So those additional 434 new parking spaces will be available just before the start of the Thanksgiving holiday travel period. But we are still on track for that, fortunately, and we anticipate the work will be completed by November 18th. So we'll continue to keep you posted if weather or anything like that affects us, but we are looking like, as we'd asked, that we would have those extra parking spaces when we really need them during the holiday season. Yeah, go ahead. Just a second. All right. So we are happy to report no health advisories for the Bruce Beach area from September 30th until October 23rd. We continue to test there. And we did have, during that time, 1 poor sample, but per the Department of Health protocol, we resampled it and it came back okay. Another set of samples was taken yesterday, and we'll get those results sometime this week. So on October 23rd, our city and county staff collected water samples from 7 additional storm sewer locations to continue investigating the source of the bacteria. And that same collaboration, ECUA, DEP, and the county all agreed on which locations to sample and test. And we plan to, now that we've really gotten a little bit of consistency and understanding about what's going on over there, we can move forward with phase 2. Phase 2 is at Bruce Beach is done. We've just got the fence up, and we've been awaiting, prioritizing, making sure we understood what was going on water quality wise. But we plan to unveil now on Friday, November 8th at 3 o'clock. So we will do phase 2 and have the Bruce Beach Park complete. And also proud to announce that last week, the Florida Redevelopment Association Conference in Tampa, the phase 1 portion of Bruce Beach was awarded the 2024 Roy F. Kinsey Award for Best Capital Project Infrastructure for a Large City. So, you know, kudos to everybody involved, to all of SCAPE, our CRA staff, our Public Works team, Biggs Construction. That certainly, well, we know it's beautiful, but that really gives it more validation to say that folks around our state agree that it's one of the best projects that's been completed in recent time. I want to give a quick update on community response specialists. You know, of course, you know, there are 2 full-timers, boots on the ground, for outreach, not just for the homeless community, but obviously that's a big part of what they do. So since the beginning of this year, our community response specialists have had 1,478 interactions. That could be verbal check-ins, that could be folks that need services available to them. So about 1,500 in this calendar year. We've gotten 616 with direct services, so meaning of that group, 616 of those folks, so you're talking about a couple a day on average, and if you go to only Monday through Fridays, it would be even higher, but a couple a day right now at least. We are getting to some kind of direct service, and that could be anything. That could be a meal, that could be a bed, that could be lots of different things, and then also 209 referrals. So Brittany and her team are doing an amazing job. As we get our CRA sergeant on board, we'll have even continued collaboration and strategy of what's going on in our downtown core. But what I see oftentimes is I might get an email or someone may ask a question somewhere on the street about, well, I see this or I see visible homelessness, and the presumption sometimes is we aren't doing anything. So my normal response to that, at least via email now, is to send the weekly spreadsheet that I get from Brittany that shows exactly how much work they're doing. And so sometimes, it's human nature that we might see some visible homelessness or something that may bother us, and we automatically presume that means the police department, the sheriff's department, the city, the county, whoever the case may be, may not be doing anything. But there's lots of things that we're doing, and there's lots of things that our nonprofits are doing. And I highly recommend that people go to the homeless reduction task force meetings that they have every quarter. That's another question I ask when someone says, I can't believe no one's doing anything. My first question is, well, have you been to a homeless reduction task force meeting? Because if you have, you'd realize exactly how much is going on in terms of providing service and trying to reduce homelessness. So that's well beyond what the city is doing. We're trying to play an active role, but we're just one part of that. There's so many great nonprofits out there doing great work to help reduce homelessness that sometimes gets lost in the shuffle because of a presumption. So very appreciative of CRSs, and it's nice to hear those type of numbers to know that that's certainly a worthy investment on our part to do what we can to not just say that's someone else's problem, but for us to try to get involved and give those people who need it a hand up. Miraflores update. Adrian, this has been obviously a long project, but Adrian's doing a great job running this, and we got more good news. We're set to receive a $35,000 grant funding from the Florida Division of Historical Resources Abandoned African American Cemeteries Grant Program for Miraflores. So of the 11 projects seeking funding, the Miraflores project was the highest score project on the list. So a huge kudos to her and our community group that continues to help us and guide us through this process. So these funds will be used to develop a long-term preservation plan, $15,000 for consultant, $20,000 for a commemorative marker, and this will also serve as a structure for reinterring the 2 individuals who were recovered in 2021 under the Boy Scout building. So just waiting on Secretary of State Cord Bird to sign the recommended list, and then the funds will be released. And Adrian's also working on a National Park Service grant. She's in the bag. Certainly, if you guys have any questions after this, we can get those answered for you. But again, more great news, and I'm very appreciative of how Adrian and her team are helping continue to manage this project and really making it a very complex situation. And I think us really benchmarking how these types of things should be done. And I know we get inquiries from other communities that have seen what we're doing, not only just getting grant funds, but how we've tried to narrate this process. And so very proud of that, and Adrian deserves all that credit. Red light cameras, a question has come up. There is some construction underway. It is our duty and obligation to the citizen to let them know when, well in advance, that when these things are going to get enforced, when they're going to start. I will be letting you media know that as soon as we know that. But just to get out in front of it, there's some construction taking place at the 9th in Bayou location. We believe the 9th and Fairfield location will be next in terms of construction. But again, we have no exact date of when it will start, and we will be very intentional about narrating that. There will be, and it's undetermined at this point, but just like other things that we do, whether it be parking or anything else, there will be some version of a grace period that will take place once those are actually up and operating. So, before someone gets on social media and sees some construction there and says, "Oh my gosh, they're starting tomorrow," that is not the case. but there's infrastructure that has to go in for the red light cameras to be going. But what you can take from this update is ultimately 9th and Bayou and 9th and Fairfield are the first two of the 5 intersections, I believe, that will have the equipment. Those are the ones that are under construction right now. So, we'll continue to give you guys the updates as we can. Obviously, you guys know the Blue Angels Homecoming Air Show, always a great weekend, a busy weekend for us. So very, very excited for that. And I know our PPD, of course, will be involved on the roadways and everything else for these big events, as we always are. And lastly, the Red Cross tomorrow morning will be at our fire department at Station 1 at 9 a.m. And they're commemorating the first anniversary of the Smoke Alarm Saturday program that we had started. You guys recall we'd had an unfortunate rash of fire-related deaths, and the common denominator in many of those was the lack of a smoke alarm. A small piece of equipment that not very expensive, and that could be the difference in life and death. So Chief Craner and myself talked about what would that strategy be. Red Cross, who already had kind of a national initiative on this, stepped up and provided the smoke alarms. And so to date, 904 smoke detectors have been handed out through those Smoke Alarm Saturday events. And while we did build this thing in a matter of loss and tragedy in our community, we've now really become a benchmark for the Red Cross and fire departments up and down the panhandle in the region that are going to actually duplicate this program. So again, it makes you feel good when you're doing the right thing, and then makes you feel better when you know that other cities, other counties, agencies want to do what you're doing because it had a big impact. So very appreciative of all our firefighters. I've gotten to do a couple of those. Our city council members were out doing those. So very appreciative of all the effort to make that happen. And when you think about, we got 20,000 households in the city, give or take 21,000, that we got 904 in a year. I mean, if you think about the ratio of that, that's really stepping on it, and that's something to be very proud of. So very appreciative for everybody involved there. So they'll have that event tomorrow morning at Station 1 at 9 a.m. And that is all I've got for you guys. Happy to take your questions. That was easy. Go ahead.
Mayor, the community response specialist, so all those interactions, do y'all have data on how many are with like repeat people, or does it give you any kind of better insight on how to tackle the homeless problem?
Well, as we stood up this program, you guys know I'm a data-driven person. What we didn't want is to just have 2 folks out there doing their best in the community and then not having any ability to say what kind of impact we're having. With that, there's some nuance to it. With some of those reports we get, we have some specific reports and language that will dictate that. For example, it may say we had 3 interactions this week with homeless individuals, and within the description of that, it may say, hey, this is someone we're familiar with or someone that we aren't familiar with. So yes, it's tracked, but not so much in a spreadsheet column. It doesn't say, interaction versus a repeat interaction type thing. But yes, that is notated typically when we see this, some of the familiar individuals that might be folks that we run into more than once. So, but nonetheless, at the end of the day, addressing visible homelessness, whether it's the same person from 6 months ago or it's a new person, you don't just talk to somebody. That's, anybody will tell you in the homeless reduction community, it doesn't. If it was as easy as having one interaction with someone and they'll be off the street for good, that's not always the case. Whether it's mental health issues, whether it's drug abuse issues, addiction issues, things like that, it's not that clean and that easy. So that's just the nature. That will always be the nature. Is that some of these interactions, of course, are going to be, several interactions, perhaps with the same person over a period of time.
Is there any? Does it give you any kind of insight into like new policies or things you can take like to the homeless task force to say this is what we're seeing, to kind of tackle this on?
Yeah, and so I think it's important you step back to what's the why behind this. Yeah, the why behind it is I was meeting with other mayors around the country, and I'd heard their early successes of doing this. And what we were trying to do is take a more fair approach that cities in previous years, and certainly this city in previous years, how we handled situations with visible homelessness is we sent someone out in a bulletproof vest and had a gun on their hip. And the optics of that, I mean, and we have amazing, I mean, Officer Partridge does an awesome job at CRA and did that diligently. I mean, I think it was documented in the media, the great work. I don't want to take away what our CRA officers were doing when it was just them. But there's just a different mindset when a plainclothes, yes, they work for the police department, but this is someone who's trained in saying, how do we get you to the right place? How do we, and those are not always the easiest interactions either, by the way, based again, whether someone's, on a substance or has a mental health issue, those are not the easiest interactions. So having someone trained in that and us showing as a city that we're sympathetic and if you want to hand up, then we want to provide that for you. So Brittany is very involved with the other nonprofits. Obviously that communication and those relationships are vital because we need that our community response specialists to be able to diagnose an issue and be able to call the right person, right? I mean, ultimately, the best role is that we aren't the starting line and the finish line for reducing homelessness. We are the starting line, and for us to be effective, our folks need to know how to get you to the right place. We have so many amazing nonprofits here that can be the finish line, that can be that middle area. Our goal is to be as proactive as possible and not hope someone else is doing it, but to be as proactive as possible in getting folks that are visibly homeless the resources that they need. And I think the overall theme that you can see is we continue to go in a direction that if you are looking for help, then we feel an obligation to be a part of that solution. If you're not looking for help, then or you're causing safety issues in the road, or you're just here to panhandle, then with state law, with public safety law, that might be a little more difficult. That you're not going to cause safety issues for us in our roadways. So that's that. I think I feel good about where we're at. I certainly feel good about the proactive effort that the city has taken to say this isn't just Waterfront Mission's job or Bright Bridge's job or the COC's job, that it's our job too. And we got to all work hand in hand together. So our team is absolutely integrated with those members, those nonprofits, the Homeless Reduction Task Force, giving them updates and letting them know, what they hear on the street.
Given that the city's new public camping ordinance is now in effect, how will that be enforced, and how quickly will it go from a warning to a citation to possible jail time?
Yeah, what I do, I defer that the enforcement to Mike Wood at PPD. I'd let the police speak to that process. But the good news is that we're in adherence with the state law, and that we have the ability to enforce the state law, and that's why that was a necessity. What I'm very proud of with our police department is we've got a lot of logic and a lot of common sense. We understand that this is we can come up as happened in both Reeves. We can come up with every anecdote, one-off story that we could ever say about this person at this age and this vehicle. What happens then? We can do that with every ordinance we have in the city. We could take the current ordinances right now and we can all say, well, what about this one situation? What usually prevails is what's the common sense approach. If this is someone that was a flat tire away from homelessness and we find them, certainly what are we going to do? We're going to send our community response specialists out there and see if we can get them some help. That's what we're going to do. So there is no vision, and I maintain that, to arrest our way out of homelessness. That will not solve our problem. But we do have to adhere to a state law. And our businesses also have a set of expectations, as they should. And on public property, that on our sidewalks, and they have an expectation. They invest here. They're taxpayers here too. So we're going to balance that the best way we can. But in terms of specific enforcement, warnings, all that type of stuff, I would certainly defer that now to to the folks that would be in charge of that.
Mayor, on the Skinny Children's Trust,
Mhm.
roughly they've got about 1.5 million of city CRA money.
Mhm.
Have they been what have you told, are they allowed to spend it how they want to spend it? Have they been asked to earmark it?
Where's
are
it
you
stand?
with that?
So, yeah, I've notified them that my intent is to redirect the previous and future funds that would be coming to the city, primarily focused on our 4 100% economically disadvantaged schools. So that, of course, would be Workman, Holm, Sims, and Global. I'm actually going to Holm and Workman tomorrow morning. So I've spoken with both principals multiple times, but I'm going to do on-site the same way I've done with Global and the same way I've done with Sims, because it's not a one-off solution. And what Sims needs with half of their enrollment lives in Pensacola Village, and the challenge that may present might be completely different than what the challenge that Global has or the challenge that Holm has. Historically, Holm has been has had a large ESE population. That has gone down over the years. It's not nearly what it was, but that might mean that some financial solution for them is going to be different than Sims. And so we're trying to do our due diligence there. And also we're looking at bigger picture things. So there might be some solutions we've talked about. One I'm interested in is teacher retention, and that we know that if you see that same face in that third grade classroom that taught you, and Rick, you probably know the data better than I do. What we know for a fact is that when it's a more difficult school to teach at, that's economically disadvantaged or was previously a failing school, the average amount of time a teacher stays there is less than an A school. We know that. So how do we incentivize that? So that might be, just as an example, that's not in stone yet, but that's an example of a solution that we might do across all of those schools. But we're also going to be looking at nuanced solutions. Workman Middle, that's the one middle school. I'm very, very interested in, and I've already had previous conversations with ST Engineering about starting not just at a high school level, but at a middle school level with maybe in partnership with Pensacola State, that we come in and do an academy and get our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders familiar with what this is. And let's really start that pathway to being able to provide for your family early in life. And so we're looking at all that. To your question, yes, I've notified the Children's Trust that we are going to be coming up with a plan that will be hand in hand with the school district and with the trust. So ball's in our court right now as we continue to do some of that due diligence. I just came back from Leadership Florida. As a matter of fact, one of the members in my Leadership Florida class is running the Children's Trust down in Miami. So of course, this conversation came up. I just reached out to the head of all the trusts and sent an email this morning about picking her brain about what are some best practices of things the trusts around the state. So I'm going to do my research, and we're going to try to come up with the best solution that we can. But we continue to go down that road, Rick. That we're gonna say, how do we all come together and make sure that we're focusing this primarily on those schools?
Just to follow up on that, just so I understand, you're talking about instead of collecting the CRA tax, working with the Children's Trust to have the money directed.
That's correct.
Because if the city collected it, you wouldn't be able to. You'd have to spend it in the CRA, right?
Sure, and listen, we could come up with a million things that could help children. I mean, infrastructure in our CRAs. I mean, it could be $1.5 billion. We could probably come up with a way to spend it. But my intent is to respect the spirit of these dollars that our taxpayers voted on. And what I think we're really fortunate with this partnership, if we make this work, is that this is one of those things one of those not my job things that we have the ability to say, how can we have generational impact at these schools that may not have been able to see this type of funding otherwise, and what these opportunities are. If we can help keep teachers at these schools, that's great. If we can help create opportunity at middle schools, if we can buy a shuttle bus so we can, with these dollars, so kids that live in Pensacola Village aren't not getting tutored after school because of one piece of equipment. You know, that's an example. I mean, that to me is a no-brainer. I mean, that's something we should be doing. And if that means these trust dollars are in partnership with the city, and that's the difference between 10 or 12 or 15 kids getting tutoring every day, I mean, that's the easiest investment of all time. So it allows us, and I understand, and that's no knock of the school district. You know, the school district has an entire school district to run. If we have the ability this one time to be able to redirect these dollars and help prioritize some of the kids in the city limits, then I think everybody wins. And I mean, I have not run into, from my conversations with Lindsay Cannon, my conversations with Keith Leonard, I've not run into any concern or question about it, because I think it does check all the boxes for all of us, right? What are these dollars for? The trust wants to help outcomes for the youth of this county. This will do that. The school district, these are dollars that they wouldn't otherwise have. These are dollars that help their schools and help the outcomes and their teachers and whatever the case may be. So it checks all their boxes. And so that's why I'm really advocating for this solution, and I feel good about it. And it's just a matter of us kind of coming up with what that year one looks like. And so that's what I'm in the midst of doing right now. And you know, my intent would be, even if it's not everything, my intent would be certainly to have something going to start the next school year, would be my goal.
Mayor, last year Representative Andrade introduced HB 109, a bill that would allow cities to apply to convert district schools into chartered schools. Did you ever discuss that with the representative? The bill died in subcommittee, it never got very far. What are your thoughts on that? I don't mean to wind the clock back a long way, but had you suggested that to him, or where did that come from?
No, but what, you know, certainly my indications to him were, when you've been in the mid 50s out of 67 counties for as long as we have, we should be looking at every option. And so if that were to pass, and would that be something the city would explore? Sure, it would be something the city would explore, but we would evaluate that. I mean, you know, what is it? How does it read? What does it look like? Would it be one school or all the schools? I mean, there's still a lot we would have to learn on that. But my response is more philosophical and just saying that I'm willing, as I did in my previous life before this job, I'm willing to try to do anything to get us to move the needle. And we have amazing principals and amazing teachers here that care about outcomes. But sometimes it's going to take an injection of dollars. Sometimes it's going to take changing the way we've done things to see positive change. I mean, and so I would say we should be open to every possible option. And of course, I would have to learn more and know before I would say I would definitely do that or I wouldn't do that. But we should have our ears open to every possible opportunity to improve educational outcomes here, period.
Go back to Bruce Beach, and sorry if you covered this in the
Yeah.
last 2 months, but these investigations, are y'all figuring out what's causing it, and what to be done in the future to prevent it?
Yeah, so we paused the opening of phase 2 because we had some troubling tests. It's been tested consistently, by the way. We didn't not test it and then we went out there. But we saw enough of a blip of inconsistency of tests, and then when it tested for human bacteria, certainly, if you recall, ultimately it was kind of the same iteration of what happened at Garden and Spring, that we had seen a test pop, and then we started testing up the line and found that there was a leak under the state road there. Got that fixed. So same concept here. I'm not sure that certainly at this moment we haven't identified a clear culprit, but we've also seen now 3 weeks of testing that's been good. So what was it, a one-time thing? Will it pop again? We'll continue to test. It's not like, hey, all right, sounds good, it's been 3 weeks. We'll continue to be on top of that and testing it. And this is not a new challenge. Despite what you may hear, that this park was not built on the promise that it will only be built if there's never ever going to be a negative bacteria test. The reality is, we had a wastewater treatment plant across the street for decades. I mean, there's gonna be challenges to that. And what I think the citizens should expect from us is for us to take it seriously and to continue to monitor it, and that's what we'll do. So, just because we've had 3 weeks of positive tests doesn't mean we're walking away and saying, okay, well, it's good enough for us. But we feel comfortable enough right now that the process of trying to further evaluate where a possible leak might be continues, as well as enough positive tests to say, okay, we feel good enough that we've stopped what we were doing and focused primarily on this test. Now we can kind of inch forward, go ahead and get the park open, and we'll continue to test and collaborate moving forward.
On Miraflores, have y'all, with this grant coming out, have y'all set a new meeting for the advisory group to decide, talk about how you'll use this money?
Not yet. We promised at the very beginning of this with our community group that we wouldn't have them meet just to meet, and give update, and obviously it's a slow, it's kind of a roller coaster of, you may not have a lot of information for a while, and then you get a lot of really pertinent information. So, what I know is the community group will be heavily involved in what that marker will be, how it'll be represented. That was a day one. We knew eventually, no matter what we found, we were going to be commemorating that. We were not going to be digging up anything, and we were going to be commemorating this in some way. So that's what Adrian and all of our community partners that have been working diligently with us, and certainly the community group, that I would say from day one, that's really been probably the most important thing that they're going to do. We kept them briefed on everything we were learning, but I think leaning on them and their different perspectives and expertise is going to help us that whatever is left here and however we commemorate this is done respectfully and done with the community in mind. So no, not a date yet, but certainly part of that 35,000 is going to be that actual physical commemorative thing, that item, whatever that looks like, and I'm excited to hear what the community group comes up with and how we commemorate. Anything else? All right, guys, appreciate it.